we tend to take relationships for granted. One question for a toxic relationship is, how much is at stake? There's an investigator, Julianne Holt-Lundstad, who studies loneliness, and what she has estimated is that being lonely is as dangerous to your health as smoking half a pack of cigarettes a day or of being obese. And so what we know is that there are these very real, concrete effects of social isolation and loneliness that damage us as we go through adult life.
I read in your book that there was a link with Alzheimer's as well.
Yes, there is. That the brain declines sooner, and the onset of Alzheimer's is earlier in people who are lonely.
You're twice as more likely to develop. I believe that was in the Marmalade Trust study. It said you're twice as likely to develop Alzheimer's if you're lonely.
It could be. And we think that has to do with stimulation of brain pathways. So the thing that makes relationships a little scary and risky because people are unpredictable is also the thing that stimulates our brains. So when I came in here, you and I had never met. Mm-hmm. So I was going to talk to you. I didn't know what you'd be like, right? I didn't know what the questions would be like. But that's good for my brain because you've got my brain running on a lot of different circuits. And that's stimulating my brain circuits. That's a good thing. You, I think, are preventing me from becoming demented earlier. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Are we good at understanding? You know, I think back to that kid, me, sat in that room in Manchester, just absolutely focused on building a business and becoming a CEO and all of those things, the monetary upside. I was particularly bad at, if you'd asked me what the value of a relationship was, I would have said, I probably would have just pointed to the costs. I would have said it's going to have time and arguments. And
yeah.
In the research that you've done, are people good at understanding the value of a relationship?
No, they're not. They're not. Partly because relationships are the background. I mean, if you think about it, we've never known the world without relationships. Most of us do not live in solitude. And so there have always been people around, which means we tend to take relationships for granted. And it's only when you pull back and you look at, thousands of lives that we saw these powerful effects, the differences between people who had good relationships and people who didn't. Most of us are, it's like that old joke about the two fish swimming along, and the older fish swims by and says, "Hey boys, how's the water?" And one fish turns to the other and says, "What's water?" And, we're in this swirl of relationships all the time that we take for granted. And so it's particularly difficult for us to understand that this is something that we need to pay attention to, nurture, cultivate throughout life.
What if I'm in a toxic relationship? What if my partner is an asshole? Do I stay because of these physiological benefits, insulation from stress or whatever it might be? Or do I dump them and go it alone in life?
Well, as with so many things, one size does not fit all. There's a huge amount of discernment involved. So if you think about it, one question for a toxic relationship is, how much is at stake? How much do I have invested? So let's say you're married and you have children together. Then the idea is to work really hard to see, is there a way to salvage this relationship? If only for the children, but also because the partnership could have benefits. And so what we would say is, if there's a lot invested, then we work harder to see, is there any way we can find ways to work out our differences? Sometimes there isn't, and those relationships need to be ended. But I want to point out that most relationships of any consequence have conflict. And so the real issue is not, are there conflicts? The real issue is, can we work out conflicts regularly in ways that make us both feel okay about ourselves and about each other? If we can't do that, then those relationships often need to be stepped away from.